Hello, hello, welcome back. We got Blaine the HerbMan Andrusek. You're on, I think this must be like episode 13, I think.
I think you're right. I think I saw it at number 12,
Yeah,
which surprised me.
right. And I'm not sure if we included our kind of plant walk that we did during the summer, if that was, well, we did a number of episodes around that in Rotary Park, downtown Calgary, your old stomping grounds. I kind of went around and talked about all the different plants. I'm not sure if that's in that order and those numbers, but yeah, we could be up to 15 episodes. So if you're just joining us, we have Herbal Elder, Blaine Andrusek. How many years ago was that you were given that
An
title?
old growth human is what somebody's called me lately,
Yeah, there
which
we
I
are.
really appreciated.
Yeah, cool.
And it's with my birthday coming up in a week. It'll be precisely 50 years ago that I ran away and lived in the woods alone for 4.5 months.
Wow.
And I had no idea.
It would set you on this trajectory, huh?
Yeah, I was running away to the woods because I got freaked out about living and working. Working for a living just didn't make sense. But when you go in the woods and you got to do the old chop wood and haul water,
Yeah.
you can either stay in bed and freeze
Right.
or get up and cut some wood and go hunting. So, it's like, oh, work, live, oh, work, live. I get it now.
Yeah.
But in the city, you do something, you get a job
Yeah.
and get paid, and then it's all sort of like a barter system.
Right.
Cash is really
Yeah.
just sort of like bartering.
It's a proxy. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's so important, this idea of rites of passage. My daughter's kind of at that age. She'll be turning 19 soon. And yeah, we've been, because I had my own journey and experience. My wife had hers, you've had yours. And you really have to create your own in this day and age, in this world. Like culturally, it's not there as the thing to do as it might have been in the past. You hear about the Aboriginals, like the walkabout or whatever it is, but just to give you an experience, like
vision quests for
vision
some of the
quests.
locals.
Yeah, I mean, you got out of it this idea of like work, live. There's also that element of finding yourself. I can only imagine, being in the woods that long by yourself, getting to know yourself, having to, in my early experiences, one of the hardest things was being with myself, like no distractions.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
Yeah, all the memories start flooding up. You think about relationships. You're thinking about the past, about the future. And being in that present moment is a tough one, but I think it's a really essential one. So we were trying to sell this on our daughter, just like, find something, and we're gonna help her, try and do that. But ultimately, it's got to come from her to, have something like that experience, this rite of passage, kind of into adulthood that gives you a perspective, gives you a kind of a reality check on life.
Well, when I was growing up, there was such a lock-in, and it still is this way for a lot of young people. I think that it's an automatic thing that you finish high school and then you're going to college,
Right.
or whatever. And a lot of people are going, like,
Yeah.
I started school. I forget the deal was. It's because of the date of my birthday or something. But I started school a year younger than most people or whatever. And then I skipped grade two because I was I guess a bright lad.
Yeah.
And so I started grade 12 when I was 14.
No, what?
And yeah,
Wow.
and which is just stupid.
Yeah.
And then at such a young age, so they push you through because you're capable, and then you get out of school and you're kind of, well, now what?
Yeah.
I had no idea what I wanted to do,
For sure.
and so that's where, like, I was in a band, so the band thing kind of
Yeah.
had me going for a while, but it's almost stupid to graduate anybody that young.
Right.
It's not a step forward because the world is spooky, I think, and
Yeah.
I knew a lot of people that went to college young, finished even 2 degrees, and weren't sure what they wanted to do with their life.
Yeah.
I ran into a guy in a coffee shop one day who was, again, he had 2 degrees, and when I said, so what are you doing now, Bill? And he said, well, I'm studying law. I'm
Right.
back in school studying law. And I said, why? And he said, because I want to make a movie. And I said, so what's the connection there? He said, well, lawyers make a lot of money, so I need money to make a movie.
Ah.
So I'm studying law to be a lawyer so I can make a movie. And I
was
just,
like,
this is a
okay.
guy who's already got 2 degrees. And I just thought, well,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a stretch,
Yeah.
But he was bright enough
having these conversations, which we love. It tends to kind of meander. We cover all kinds of topics, but really is about pulling from life experiences that you've had, sharing those insights, that wisdom through the kind of the different paths that you've taken. Getting into being a herbalist for several decades, influencing all the people that you have. As a teacher, as an educator, all the way from you sharing that story about taking. I like that, the people out in the city and using their list of noxious weeds as the plant guide, to working with Terry Willard in Wild Rose College, to hosting just absolute like epic parties, serving up good delicious food and living a great life. And the wisdom that you've gleaned from that all the way down to the chemistry of essential oils and plants. And so we're having fun with these conversations. We always welcome any questions, any comments. You can post those down below. You can email Blaine directly as well, and kind of gives us a little bit of starting point to launch off from.
Yeah,
but
it was. There was a couple of occasions where I was hired as a keynote speaker for a conference that was being arranged by somebody who had already written 2 books
right.
and was well known in the field, but off camera would admit they didn't know beans about the chemistry,
Right.
even though they'd written 2 chapters about it. So you end up with all sorts of false information because it's written by somebody who doesn't understand it themselves,
Right.
and then other people read that and quote them, and you got all this loose information. So that was something I kind of got to be a specialty in, I guess, was
Right.
understanding the chemistry better than most.
Yeah, I know, it's been really interesting to have you share that. And on our drive over, you were mentioning that you've spent the last day, was it a whole day yesterday or previous to that?
All afternoon.
All afternoon, yeah.
It's an amazing world, and what happened to me yesterday was somebody wanted to know more about Comfrey, and I don't think we ever finished that.
Yeah, I mean that's
So
we could really dive into.
Comfrey's a plant that came to us from Russia originally, and it's something I encourage people to grow, whether you have just a city garden or you have an acreage or something, because
Yeah.
if you don't think you can grow things, all you need is a 3-inch piece of root from somebody who has Comfrey,
Yeah.
and you can have a Comfrey forest within 2 years, because it just
Right. Yeah. Be warned. If you do plant that Comfrey, it will spread.
put in like 10-inch plastic surround if you want to contain it at all.
Yeah.
If you just want it in a little corner of your garden, I think the best way to do it is I like to take a 5-gallon pail. You can always get them easy free, and the best way to cut plastic is with a skill saw and a plywood blade backwards. You put the plywood blade in backwards. I learned that from people who do siding on houses.
Oh, really?
And then it goes through plastic like butter. There's no chipping, no anything.
Right.
So you just lop the bottom off, and then put your Comfrey plant in there, because you need 10-inch edging to contain it. And then you could just have one in a corner.
Right.
Because anything like 6-inch edging, it'll just crawl under that. And,
Yeah.
some of the people I've given plants to end up with a corner of a bush that's now 5 feet across, and
Right.
they just started with a little 4-inch root.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Let's maybe break it down. What is Comfrey? What are its kind of known benefits? Why grow it, use it, how to use it, and then we'll get into kind of some of the information you're diving into, like the controversy, shall we say, around is it toxic? Maybe Comfrey is something that you've heard. Oh, never want to take it internally, that type of thing. But starting from the top, I mean, probably I came at Comfrey from working in health food stores, right? Knit bone was another name for it. And then I've also come at it from the permaculture angle, which we're talking about in terms of, gardening, amazing, as a living mulch, chop and drop. Some would say, no, that's too much valuable medicine. Don't just throw it in your compost or drop it as living mulch.
Well, I would put Comfrey in my compost, but after it was cooked.
Right.
And then it wasn't an issue with it spreading.
Oh, yeah.
So back on target. coming from old Russian stories, comfrey could be used for a lot of things. The plus list is there's a lot of mucilage in it.
Right.
So for things like sore throats and coughs and things, it would help coat and protect. But it's really high in tannins, which make it astringent, so it's a good first aid plant because it'll stop bleeding.
Yeah.
Kind of like yarrow, really, really, really fast. And if you can turn that into a prepared product like ointments or I did water extracts, and I'll come back to that. But very good first aid plant, or for something, even an old wound, it would just tighten things up. There's a lot of, for people in the know with nutrition, we make a lot of our own calcium out of silica.
Right.
And so comfrey is one of the plants that has a lot of silica in it, and if you don't buy into that story, it's got a lot of calcium as well, and that's where the old name knit bone came from.
Right.
So especially things that were hard to bandage, like you fell off a horse and broke a couple of ribs.
Yeah.
It's hard to bandage something like that. It's not like a broken arm where you put a splint on it or whatever. I would still endorse that, and I've used it. People have called me in, friends of a friend or whatever. I've used it on injured horses. There was one that I went to see somewhere not far from Airdrie. Huge. I couldn't believe how big this riding, huge barns and stables and things and riding facilities they had. But a young horse had got its leg caught in a 3-strand wire fence and freaked out. And nobody saw it for the whole day. And it was going like this, freaking out.
Yeah.
And the leg, it almost looked like a cougar had eaten half of its leg. It was just missing. You could see the bone.
Yeah.
Right? And I felt so badly for this horse. So I thought, okay, what can we do that's practical and it's in a lot of pain? So I definitely want to use comfrey as the base, something like clove oil to help with the pain and keep it from getting infected. Right? And these are both things that are incredibly cheap to use. So when they unwrapped it and used a hose to clean up the wound, and I saw what was I'm going to deal with here, I was almost crying for this horse. And got out the herbs and made up this stuff, and we bandaged it up. And I remember just from things like clove working so quickly, I remember that horse turning and looking at me and just kind of like, my favorite patients, I know I'm not supposed to use that word, are animals, young people, young children, the elderly, because everybody else is just too busy to even notice what you're doing. Right? But animals like horses, this horse turned around and looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Mister, I don't know where you came from, but thank you very much from the bottom of my heart." You just see it in their eyes, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they had said that the animal had already seen a couple of vets and a couple of riders and whatnot, and everybody had said, well, if you can save the leg, it might be a good breeding stock, but nobody's ever going to ride this horse.
Right.
And it was saddled a year after I had my way with it.
Wow.
That felt good to hear. I got the backup news. But, and for like $100, it wasn't some bizarre, tricky process. So anyway, back on line with comfrey. So it's got tannins, and then there's a cell proliferant called allantoin, which makes you think it must have first been named from aloe. I'm not sure about that. It's spelled with 2 L's, just allantoin, it looks like. And it's a great cell proliferant. And if you're growing comfrey, the allantoin content is highest in the young leaves. So if you let comfrey grow, it'll get about this tall and have blue bellflowers on it, and fall over in your yard and mess up other plants. So you have to stake it and do all of that. And if you do that in late summer, its allantoin content is actually quite low.
Right.
So comfrey has enough chi that if you let it get about a foot high with lots of big leaves and nail it right flat to the ground, you can do that 3 times a summer.
Amazing.
And the young leaves have the most allantoin.
Right.
So you actually get more crop than leaving it grow,
Yeah.
and better crop, right?
Yeah.
So, so we've got silicon and calcium and a self-proliferant and tannins, which are really good to initially close the wound.
Yeah.
And like, what a great first aid plant that is,
Yeah.
right? So how can we capture it? Well, if we tincture it, that's going to involve alcohol, which is going to really burn on an open wound. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to sting like crazy. And even just the tannins, if you make a reduced extract, are so strong that it's going to burn
Right.
a bit on an open wound. Not for long, just a minute.
Yeah.
But what I took to doing, and also, I remember one person at a conference said, well, no, the herb comfrey isn't worth anything. We have to have the root.
Right.
And I just kind of looked at him and said, well, I've got about 5,000 people out there that I've helped with the leaves.
Yeah.
So I disagree with you, sir.
So far, everything you've said has been related to the leaves. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is chop the plant down, take the leaves, and chop it coarsely, like a little coarser than making rhubarb pie, but kind of up to 3 inches maybe.
Yeah.
And get it going. Heat will destroy, too much heat will destroy allantoin. So you want to kind of just barely get it to a simmer.
Yeah.
And let it sit covered and just sort of stew there for
Right.
several hours. And then doing it at home, I don't have fancy equipment. I would just use, you can get like screens that are a little coarser than or larger than you would use to just pour up through for a cup of tea, for example. You can
Right.
get them. I usually buy them at Chinese markets, and they have an extra layer of steel over this fine the strainer. There's another that makes it stronger,
Oh yeah.
and just use a potato masher
Right.
to hand mush the stuff. And if you do that with just a tea strainer, you're going to break it pretty quick.
Mhm.
So I like buying those ones that have the extra layer of the
Right.
wire, about a 1/4 inch squares maybe, and just hand compress everything.
And so that's after it's been in a pot with a little bit of water, or
Yes,
just its
I'm
own-
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some nice water,
Yeah.
stream water. I would like to go to. I used to go to a place just on the edge of Canmore
Right.
to get spring water,
Yeah. Totally.
and you could use distilled water because distilled water likes to grab extra information from things, so that would be a good choice, really.
Yeah.
I used to just usually use spring water. Yeah, and let it simmer like that, not quite simmer all day, and push it off, strain it off, and then now that's good stuff to put in your compost because it's not going to spread. Like some people take comfrey and chop it up and put it all over their garden, and then the next year they've got a yard full of comfrey
Right.
because it'll come from just a bit of root. I remember one occasion when there was some friends of mine in Hillhurst neighborhood that only kept a few plants because I would come and harvest them
Right.
and kind of make sure they didn't get out of hand. And so I had a friend, a lot of my students have become friends over the years, and so I had one of my herbal student friends with me, and he actually said to the house owner, is it hard to grow? And that friend looked at me and said, like, where'd you get the new kid? Kind of thing. And he had boots on, and he took a piece of the root. No, because I wasn't touching the roots. He literally, to one of the plants I'd already cut off, he just used his boot heel to kick into the dirt and get out a piece of root about that long.
Yeah.
And then he walked across the alley and kicked a hole in the ground again with his boot heel
Right.
and put it in, and then covered it up and stomped on it and kind of crossed his arms and said, come back next year.
Right. And you'll see.
And sure enough, next year there was this huge big bush of comfrey there.
For sure.
From one root. So it's a great herb, great plant for people that don't think they can grow things.
Yeah.
It gives you some confidence.
Totally.
So the problem, and a lot of people, especially when they thought you needed to use the root only, and a lot of plants store toxins in either their roots or their seeds.
Right.
There's a lot of plants that'll say, you can have my leaves if you want them, but you can't have the future, which is the root, and you can't have my babies, which is the future. So a lot of plants store toxins in the seeds.
Yeah.
So anyway, and the mucilage is best out of the stems and root.
Okay.
You don't get much mucilage out of it. So for making cough drops,
Yeah.
I would go with the roots. That's what was always used.
Right.
And they didn't care so much about the allantoin. Well, anyway, they used whole roots. So the chemical, when it was finally discovered by our good government people, was a group of compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids.
Yeah.
And that's all I knew when I was taking herb courses. We couldn't touch comfrey roots because of the pyrrolizidine alkaloids.
Yeah.
Okay, the roots are poison. It wasn't until years later I was at an actual in what do we call them? Health Protection Branch of Health, the NHPD, whatever they are.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the guys said, "Oh, we got that all figured out now. It's not pyrrolizidine alkaloids is a big group,
Yeah.
and we nailed it down to one compound called echimidine. That's ECH, kind of like echinacea, ECHIM, like it sounds. Looks like echimidine, and that's where I went yesterday. Was starting out with pyrrolizidine alkaloids and finding out that they're in darn near everything you eat from a produce counter.
Yeah.
They're in apples.
Wow.
They're in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And where their content is quite high, or the echimidine content is quite high, ends up in some of the plants like borage, that if you have a lot of it growing around your farm or whatever, the bees get it in, and these alkaloids are in the honey.
Right.
So there was pages and pages and pages. I kind of skimmed through 800 pages of data yesterday. My eyes were watering, not because I was emotional, just from trying to read all of this stuff with my reading glasses on. And the number of plants that have echimidine in them is startling.
Right.
And several countries have now even taken honey, done tests and taken honey off of store shelves because it was too toxic for human consumption.
Wow.
Because of the echimidine levels. So it isn't just about comfrey.
Right.
But anyway, my story always was that, okay, I know the roots are toxic, and I had read a few accounts that there was no echimidine in the leaves at all.
Right.
So I wanted it for first aid,
Right.
not for cough drops. So I thought if I make a real concentrated leaf extract,
Right.
I would get what I wanted without worrying about the toxins. But you can go online, I did yesterday, you could probably spend a whole weekend just studying pyrrolizidine alkaloids in general, and especially echimidine.
Mm-hmm.
So have at it. There were a lot of words there. I think I know a lot about organic chemistry, but I just felt like a fool going through some of this stuff. And how many regular things like apples
Right.
that have echimidine in them,
Yeah.
But how much is the thing?
Yeah. It's
So
like
are you-
cyanide and apple
Yes.
seeds. Yeah. Right.
Well, actually, echimidine is in cocaine for one,
Oh.
but apples, but a whole list of things, like I said, that are so common, including medicines, or things like cyanide has echimidine in it,
Right.
and another one of the ones that we use as a painkiller, methadone. I don't know. Anyway, it's in a lot of approved drugs
Yeah.
and a lot of common foods. And this honey thing was spooky, and not in backwoods farms somewhere, but in countries like Germany and Australia. Like, we could go with that part of Canada, and that they were pulling honey off the shelves. But anyway, I would make the leaf extract, which I would sell to, and frankly, I still would, given all that I've read since. If I broke a leg, I would take 1 ounce shots of that leaf extract, which, when I'm done with it, looks like soy sauce.
Right.
Okay, I got that much stuff out of the leaves, and then the rest goes in the compost pit. So I got this stuff that looks like soy sauce.
And how do you preserve it? Because you've just simmered it, strained it.
Yes, and what we used to do was just add glycerin.
Oh, okay.
And in most cases, that's all it took.
What's the percentage, roughly? You know, like I know with alcohol, you need 20 to 25%.
Oh no, nowhere near that.
So it's quite a bit less.
Oh yeah, like 5 maybe.
5. Wow.
Yeah. And it was funny that I remember one of my students one day told me that she went to use her Comfrey extract that she got for me, and she couldn't use it because it went moldy. Now I had, prior to this, I have found that Comfrey extract in backpacks in the garage that I haven't used for 5 years, and tackle boxes and all sorts of places where this stuff was at least 10 years old, half empty, and had never gone moldy.
Right.
And this stuff in her bedroom, I said, well, where did you have this stuff? And she said, in my bedroom. And I kind of paused for a minute and said, I wouldn't sleep there.
Yeah.
Because I just thought, there must be so much mold in your bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, it sounds funny, but, you know, I think that's a valid account.
Yeah.
So, but when you start adding essential oils, there you go with preserving things, right?
Right.
So, I found somewhere, I had met at a conference or whatever, a guy from a big plant in Ontario where they sell cosmetic chemicals, many of which are organic. Like the number of things that are made from coconuts is unbelievable. There's hundreds and hundreds of stuff that ends up in lipstick that came from coconuts, right?
Yeah.
And propylene glycol comes from coconuts.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You know, yeah,
Wow.
and so it's just amazing
Yeah.
how much stuff comes out of coconuts. So he sent me a sample, a liter of this magic white powder,
Right.
which turned out to be about a 5-year supply for me.
Right.
And then when I finally ran out, I had to buy a 25-pound sack, because
Right.
that's all the way they sell it.
Yeah.
But which I tried to share with other herbalists and such, just to get rid of the stuff.
Yeah.
But so you put, like making pudding, you start with it cold, or it'll go lumpy later. Put the white powder in a pot and whisk in the comfrey. And I know the first time I tried it, I'm not exaggerating here, I overused it, and it turned into such a thick jelly that I was able to hold the pot with the whisk in it over my head and shake it, and the whisk wouldn't come out. The jelly was that thick.
Wow.
So I think we overused it a bit. We cut it back.
Right.
But
what's the name of this white powder?
I don't even remember. It's
Wow.
just something.
Something like
You know,
thickener, gels.
Knox gelatin might work.
Right.
I never tried it, but
Yeah.
it might work. You know, you just need an emulsifier, I guess, it's some type, maybe, or a thickening agent.
Yeah.
And then I started adding essential oils in.
Right.
And I thought about lavender for sure. That's a first for so many wound things. And I forget entirely what I put in it. I mean, one of the best things that I work with essential oils for post-surgery and that sort of thing is an oil called helichrysum.
Yeah.
Or it's called immortelle in countries like France.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's very expensive.
Yeah, definitely.
And a little 4 ml bottle might cost you $100 kind of thing. It's that kind of expensive.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to avoid the helichrysum, but some of the wild sages, like there's one of the artemisias I might have mentioned when we did the one that we had in the park that we make absinthe with, absinthium.
Right.
Artemisia absinthium
Yeah.
is also called mugwort, and that's because it's a bit trippy, and if you were really sad about something or whatever, and you went down to the neighborhood pub, the guy behind the bar there would have some mugwort underneath the counter, and he would put some mugwort in your stein and then add the beer. So as you're sipping a pint or two, things would come out of the mugwort. So it was, wort means good for.
Right.
So it was good for the mug because it's a bit trippy.
Right.
Kind of like absinthe.
Right? Yeah.
So maybe all your problems would be solved because you got a little buzzed on the mugwort, right? But that's the one that in Chinese medicine they call it moxa,
Okay.
And so they use it for moxibustion, which means they burn it.
Right.
And they use, you can buy them. They look like almost like a little bigger than cigarettes,
Mm-hmm.
and they light them like a cigarette, and then use them on acupuncture points.
Yeah.
Right. I had one day I had probably a student that became a client, whatever, and she was very pregnant, and the baby was breached, and she was suddenly having extreme cramps, and I know who to call, and I called Cindy Wu, Dr. Cindy Wu, okay, and she was a medical doctor in China before Terry sponsored her to come into Canada, and she worked for a few years at Wild Rose, and then she blew Wild Rose off and got her own clinic. Well, she's still in town. If I'm injured and can't handle it, that's where I go.
Right.
Like when I had sciatica, Cindy pulled me out of that with acupuncture.
Yeah.
Cindy Wu, she's in the corner that's sort of kitty corner to that chicken place.
Oh,
This is
Chicken
in
on the Way.
Kensington.
Yeah, Chicken on the Way.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
in a building there. I forget what she calls herself, but anyway, Cindy Wu.
Right.
Probably find her in the book or online. But I got Cindy on the phone, and it was the lady's husband wasn't there, and she didn't have a car, and I didn't have a vehicle that day for some reason. Like nobody could move here, and this lady was in a lot of pain because the baby was breaching.
Right.
And I called her, and she said, "Well, I can't come because I'm busy at the clinic," and she said something about moxa, and I said, "Well, I have some, Cindy. I grow it." You grow moxa? And I said, "Yes, I have some in the garden, and I use it more for smudging. So I make little smudge sticks."
Yeah.
And what took the longest in this chat with Cindy was she couldn't find the English words. She said, "At bottom, no, not bottom," but she couldn't explain that what we wanted to do was at the base of the nail on the little toe out to the side. That's the acupuncture point, is right there.
Right.
And that's where you have to go. But she had so much trouble explaining that in English.
Yeah.
At the bottom, no, not the bottom, no. And we finally got the understanding that it's at the base of the nail out to the side. And if you had the proper cigarettes, we'll call them, you would just hold one there.
Yeah.
And I had one of my smudge sticks and did that. And the woman, her eyes were just wide because she could feel things. The baby was rolling.
Yeah.
And just there it was on my front lawn.
Wow.
We did this moxibustion
No
with
way.
homegrown moxa. You know, what a strange thing that was. So
That's cool.
anyway, that's another big sidetrack. So
Yeah.
off of Comfrey. But so when I finished that, and I can't remember what else I might have used something like, oh, that's where I said it, mugwort instead of helichrysum, just to keep the price down.
Yeah.
So I had lavender from France and comfrey from Russia, and I forget what else I put in. Oh, aloe vera, from Texas, and I had several countries involved, so that's why I called it Super Planetary Wound Gel, because I had things from all over the country. Right, and you end up with this. I don't know if this one's been opened before. So you end up with this. This is pretty old, and the emulsifier is broken down. I was going to hold it on front of the. Yeah, if I turn this over now, it's going to spill.
Yeah.
But that won't affect the usage at all. So it's a little bit jellious still, and you get this brown stuff. And rub that on any sort of wound. You could put it on with a bandage.
Yeah.
On a cut, and it just does amazing work virtually overnight on any sort of, like it could, from a shaving cut to a deep cut from surgery or whatever.
Okay, I've got a little nick on my finger here.
And you should smell some oils in there still.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely smell the lavender. Okay.
And but anybody can make a version of that at home if you're growing comfrey.
Yeah.
So again, slow cook, not too much heat. Press the herb off to get just the, and you don't need the the thickener, you could use it just as a liquid and put that on a bandage.
Yeah.
Or with gauze or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a bigger thing. And yeah, an easy to make home remedy there. But I always like to, it's almost, I'm not supposed to say First Nation anymore, indigenous style to, if you're given something, you want to return a gift.
Right.
And so I've had people who had seen me on television talking about Comfrey and get a phone call and saying, do you need some more Comfrey? And I go there and there's a corner in the backyard that's got Comfrey that's 8 feet high and about 8 feet across, and they're just amazed that they've been trying to get rid of it for years, tried all sorts of techniques. Even my husband dug a big hole there and poured gasoline there, tried to burn it up, almost blew the garage over. You can do something good with it. So I'll always take some of the gel and some of the liquid extract as a gift to say, this is what I do with it, and this is how you use it. And that's just a nice return on what ends up being like 2 garbage bags full of raw herb for me.
Yeah, cool.
So I think that's, so anyway, you can do your own research on pyrrolizidine alkaloids, but what came up with this at this conference, that's where I segued a half an hour ago, was chimidine is just one of many pyrrolizidine alkaloids. That's the one that's the problem.
Right.
And if you look at the molecular structure of it, it almost looks like, some people don't know this, but ticks sit in grass, almost like a lobster, with their front legs open, and they sit there on grass waiting for anybody like a dog or you to walk by, and they just clamp on to the fur, and that's where the tick gets on your body, and then it crawls around and then buries its face into your skin and all that sort. But that's the problem with this chimidine compound, is because of its molecular structure, it's very, very quick to grab onto other things.
Yeah.
And if you take it orally, it gets in your bloodstream, and it just loves to latch onto liver tissue.
Right.
And that's where it starts doing a lot of damage. It literally starts eating your liver, and it's some of the studies show that it's carcinogenic as well. So you could end up with liver cancer, or at high enough doses, a lot of liver damage from Comfrey. So that is very real.
Right.
But because I was using it for first aid only, not orally, I felt okay still working with the product, right?
Yeah, totally. And
so
there are historical references to different cultures using the root, right? So it's not like it's a no-go.
you could write 3 books just about Comfrey use.
For sure. Yeah.
So again, it probably comes back to dosage.
Right. And then I've heard too that certain roots, somebody sent me one time saying like, yeah, this one has been sure to be pyrodizzer.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was saying with the government guy, saying if you can send us some of your product,
Great.
and we'll test it.
Yeah.
And if you could put it right on the label, chimidine free.
Yeah.
Then you got a Cellar there.
Right.
Yeah. So you can clean it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So powerful herb, and this is why it's always great to reference traditional cultures. Like the long history, use, experience, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh no, that's bad, that's toxic," and sure, there might be some concern, some warrant there, but you figure it out and do the workarounds.
Well, this is getting off on another sort of issue, but as I'm doing some writing for the woman who bought my oil business for her website, and something I knew a long time ago, but I wasn't quite clear on it, was that one of the main components in chamomile essential oil, in the German, or they even had stuff that was called blue chamomile,
Right.
which like yarrow and chamomile and tansies are first cousins, and even the chamomiles themselves are so different in nature between, say, Roman chamomile and German chamomile. I wish they both were called chamomiles, because
Right.
people get them so mixed up. And then there's another one that we call Moroccan chamomile that's kind of half and half.
Right.
But Roman chamomile is crystal clear, has no color,
Right.
and it's the strongest sedative we have in aromatherapy products.
Yeah.
The chemicals are called esters. There's one called
Right.
linalool acetate. It's in lavender. It's in bergamot. And chamomile is about 85% esters,
Mm.
right? The Roman chamomile,
Right.
including a few like tiglac and methacrylic and a bunch of, you never hear these from any other source. So it's all these esters, so it's a super powerful sedative. I've had people with insomnia, and I told them to do like an airstrike. We talked about colds.
Yeah.
Put a couple of drops in your hands and deep breathe. And I've actually had people call me later and tell me they woke up in the morning with their hands still on their face.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, honey, this is working so well, you just better keep breathing this stuff, which I thought was hilarious, but apparently true.
Yeah.
And so I like to describe Roman chamomile as a really big, pink, fluffy hammer. And if you can't get to sleep, I just pick that up for it and go. I just like,
Yeah.
right? But German chamomile isn't like that at all. It has almost no esters,
Yeah.
and it's this real dark blue or green color. And they even sell some stuff that's called blue chamomile,
Right.
and it isn't. We read the Latin, and it's Tanacetum annuum, which is a type of tansy.
Right.
So if you buy blue tansy or blue chamomile, you're buying exactly the same thing,
Right.
mostly so. And so what happens is, this has come up when I've been buying bedding plants in the spring. I remember this one woman who was very haughty, and she was asking for help. She was like, do you have any of the blue chamomile? And I said, excuse me, but there's no such thing as blue chamomile. She was thinking there was a chamomile, blue flowers or blue leaves or blue something.
Right.
It doesn't exist. She said, I'm a certified aromatherapist and I know what there's blue chamomile.
Right.
I said, well, if you're certified, somebody might have taught you that chamazulin doesn't exist until the plant is distilled.
Right.
And in the heat and high pressure steam of the still, another isoprene unit latches on to something called myristicin, and it turns blue in the still. So, like, I like to think that no medicinal plants are growing any of this stuff for us.
Yeah.
They're growing it for themselves. Like lemongrass makes antifungal oils for their feet because they grow in wet, fungus-filled mud. So what do we use for athlete's foot? Lemongrass, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we've just learned to use and benefit from the stuff that the plants make from the cells. But chamazulin is a chemical that the plant never knew.
Right.
It's a man-made biosynthetic creation, and that got me wondering how much of that goes on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like there could be all sorts, hundreds, thousands even, of chemicals that we find when you do a gas chromatogram in oils and tinctures and whatnot
Yeah.
that the plant never knew.
Yeah, totally. And that's the role that, the herbalist, the alchemist, whatever, plays, right? In terms of drawing those things out or getting them created through their process.
And just knowing you don't even have to understand why it works. We touched on that the other day. If you find a brand, if you don't make stuff or stuff from your garden or stuff from a certain forest and you harvest it somehow and it works, just use it.
Yeah.
And why care about all of these details?
Yeah.
But that's a big part of why, in defense of the NHPD, they can test batches of things, and a different batch of the same herb might have toxic things in it, and from some different soil. It was like did this grow in a garden in BC, and the other stuff's from Nova Scotia, and there could be compounds there that don't even exist.
Yeah.
So there's, I'm trying to think of, it's in the mint family, and we know that it's abortive, but a lot of people in several states in the south of America. Pennyroyal.
Yeah.
So thank you. They've done lots of studies showing that pennyroyal, because in several states of the U.S., they drink this every night for supper, just to settle their digestion or whatever.
Yeah,
And they drink it every day of the week,
for sure.
and they don't have any issues with it, and they're not poisoned or anything. But 2 states over,
Right,
the pennyroyal's toxic.
Yeah.
You know, even abortive.
right.
So, I guess we're kind of we're spinning around the same topic here in 3 different directions. But there's just so much. I'm shooting myself in the foot a little bit here, I guess, but it comes down to when you get a source of something that works the way you want it to, stick with that source. And if you can actually get it tested and find out what's in it, some companies, when you're ordering tinctures or essential oils, you can ask for a gas chromatogram,
Right.
and they'll happily give you one. But that's just sort of a generalized one that
Right.
happened with a different batch 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's the
They
same
don't-
with nutrition facts, you know.
Yeah,
like,
they
hey,
don't-
almonds have this.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't have a GC for every single batch they make.
Totally. So come back to chamomiles, because you know most people would think, okay, well, chamomile is chamomile. If I buy my celestial seasonings chamomile sleepy time tea, you know, would they be getting Roman chamomile, or maybe we can break down the difference between those different ones. So you said Roman chamomile, at least as an essential oil, is
Right.
the most kind of
Sedative.
sedative. German chamomile, you also mentioned Moroccan chamomile. How many different types of chamomile are they? And what are each of their properties? And is that properly distinguished out there kind of in the field, in the marketplace?
The chamomile that we're getting when you buy tea bags, whether it's your store or the Safeway or whatever,
Yeah,
is usually German.
right,
And people buy it to have a sedative there, but Roman would actually work better.
right,
But when you just see, in fact, in the industry, like with tinctures and oils, if something was just called chamomile,
yeah,
I either wouldn't buy it
right,
or trust my nose,
right.
because
You'd be able to
Roman and
smell.
German just smell completely different.
Yeah,
And if you take the blue, sometimes just a really deep blue-green color that comes from a couple of chemicals, mostly chemazoline, if there's a tester in the store or whatever, if you can get 1 drop on a tissue, you want it to be a big bright blue.
right.
If it's brown, it's oxidized, and it's not useless, but for the money they're charging, I wouldn't buy it.
So would Roman chamomile produce that blue, or only
No,
the
Roman
German?
chamomile is crystal clear.
Crystal clear, yeah, okay, yeah,
From what I've been told, if you got some that was distilled yesterday, there's a barely there blue tint,
right,
but it oxidizes right away. So Roman is either crystal clear or just a very modest yellowish tint.
yeah. What are do you know the Latin names of the 2 different ones, the Roman and the German?
Roman is Anthemus nobilis,
Okay,
and German, very appropriately, is called Matricaria, which means matric mother,
mm-hmm.
matricate mother herb, because it's good for almost every female complaint
Right,
that we hear about.
mm-hmm.
But a very good healing, very good for any sort of like facial skin complaints, rashes and things,
Right,
but eczema, that sort of thing, that's where you want the German, any of the blue
Right.
oils.
yeah.
There's, I'm forgetting what it's called that people might get at my age, where you might get a ridge right up the middle, rosacea.
Right,
All of a sudden, you get this ridge right up the middle of your forehead that's raised a bit, quite red.
mm-hmm.
And we knew that it was dietary for years, and people laughed at us, but it finally came down to we were right. And if you have rosacea, you can take broad spectrum enzymes and it'll go away on its own. It's actually a dietary issue,
Right,
because as we get older, we lose a lot of our enzymes.
right, yeah.
And
then, so that's very interesting, so.
and Moroccan is often called Ormensis something.
Right, and I think I asked you this earlier, if you were to look at them just visually, would you be able to tell the difference? Do they look, oh, that's chamomile?
No, they're almost all the same.
Yeah, amazing.
Very subtle changes.
So 3 different plants, 3 different names, And does that have different benefits and properties? What is it more similar to the other
Well,
ones?
Moroccan is a bit of both,
Yeah.
and because it's a larger plant, and often found in Morocco, you'll just find it in pastures and ditches and stuff.
Yeah.
So you could probably get plant free wildcrafting. It's a fraction of the price of German or whatever, so it's very popular in skincare products.
Right.
And I actually, it's one of my favorite oils. A lot of people say, well, that's not even chamomile, it's something else.
Right.
And I go, no, I don't care what you want to call it. I love Moroccan chamomile. It has a beautiful smell,
Yeah.
a little bit almost tobacco-ish,
Oh, interesting.
but it's got a warmth. I'd rather say honey.
Yeah.
If you mixed honey and tobacco,
Right.
and that just loves to dance with Rose Absolute,
Right.
which is really great for any of the back to blemishes and things.
Yeah, rosacea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use Moroccan in some of my skin creams.
Cool.
But
Okay, do you want to try a little chamomile syrup? So I've been growing the German chamomile, and this is just one of my kind of late summer autumn projects. I started this in September, so I keep harvesting the wild flowers and sometimes the odd stem pulls as I grab that. And originally I was just throwing it in honey, which was great. It was wonderful, but it was starting to kind of crystallize it a little bit. And then it would, just with the honey, it would perfectly preserve itself. I ended up throwing in.
Yep.
Oh, I gotta see if I can open this. Okay, maybe not. My hands are slipping. It's probably from a little bit of residue from the. No, I got it. Right there. From the wound gel. Smell that.
you got honey in there?
Yeah.
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 Smell the honey.
Yeah. So it's
And other than that, it just smells herby, right?
for sure.
And that's what German chamomile essential oil smells like, is just herby.
Right.
And yarrow oil is almost identical
Mm-hmm.
to German cam,
So I've done
and about the same price.
steam distillations of both, and the beautiful blue color that emerges from them is
Oh, well, there you go.
is quite wonderful.
Yeah, so apart from the honey, it just tastes like herb, right?
Yeah.
It just tastes green.
Mm-hmm. And floral. There's definitely something like
Yeah, okay, yeah, now I'm salivating like crazy.
Isn't that great?
It took a little while to get my mouth going.
So we got a couple
And
patches of
it's definitely making me smile.
totally right. There's that matricaria, just nice, nice hug, right? Not sedative.
Oh, I can't not smile right now.
Right? Yeah, I love it. So we've got several spots in the yard where chamomile grows, and of course it kind of self-seeds and spreads.
Oh, like crazy.
Yeah, we love it.
I found that with feverfew plants too.
Oh, okay.
If you want to get chamomile growing, put it in the highest place in your garden so that the seeds spread more.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, put it on top of a pail, a pot on top of a pail or something, and you'll have plants all around it the next year. Yeah.
We've got a lot of false
Like 10,000
chamomile.
seeds a plant or something. It's
Jeez.
not quite as proliferous as the mushrooms are with their spores, but
Got up there.
a lot of the Asteraceae, that's the everything from dandelions to sunflowers,
Mm-hmm.
produce a lot of seeds.
Yeah. So we've got the false chamomile that grows just kind of like a weed in the yard, but it's easy to tell apart because it's got larger flowers. It's got no scent to it at all.
That's the one that, is not supposed to be here, and it's on our noxious weed list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having done herb walks in Edworthy Park for so many years, every once in a while
Want a little shot?
I'd spot them. Sure. It's lovely.
I'm just kind
I
of
don't know how well you can do that.
straining it with the lid a little bit here, so we don't get
I
all
never
the-
would have thought of that.
Yeah, because
Well, I
you know,
guess
here
it's
we
like
are,
pouring-
we're
it's
in
like pouring-
October, and
Pouring the water off potatoes, I mean. That's good.
there's still the chamomile plants going, you know, producing flowers. So I'm just picking them as we go, week by week.
The false one you're talking about grows about 3 feet high,
Yeah,
and it really bright green leaves.
yeah,
So, having done walks and a lot of photography in Edworthy Park for so many years, I was walking up the bike path, and there was some growing along a fence, and I was just going, I just went straight to it. I said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?"
Mhm.
Because it was never in the park before, and I've been living there for like at least a decade. You know,
right.
photographing things, I knew it was just new, and that's when I looked it up, and
Yeah.
I forget the Latin name for it, but it's
And of course, that's different than pineapple weed, which is another. That one's also Matricaria, right? In terms
Yeah.
of its Latin name.
Yeah.
I can't remember
um,
the next part of it, but
yeah, pineapple weed. It smells like pineapples or apples a little bit,
yeah.
and
I love butter, too.
that makes a nice tea.
Yeah, it really does, and honey as well.
Well,
so.
okay, and with all the honeys you do.
Yeah, I love doing honeys. It's a great way to preserve and extract and deliver the goodness of these herbs.
And pineapple weed will come out of cracks in pavement.
Yeah, totally.
Like you could be in a back alley downtown here in Calgary and see this little plant, and if you're having a bit of a bad day,
Yeah,
go pick some and crush it in your hands and close your eyes and just smell it, and it'll make you smile.
for sure. Yeah,
Because its fruitiness is so extreme.
yeah. One of the challenges I have with pineapple weed is finding it in a place
I'm gonna lick this.
that I want to pick it from because it is often growing like cracks of pavements, in gravel, down alleyways, and well trodden paths, sides of pathways where dogs and people are kind of trampling or doing their business, and yeah, but it's a lovely one.
Where did you get this
Where did I get what?
little cup?
Oh, the cup? I have no idea. I think IKEA, some nowhere special.
Because something I've been meaning to ask you,
A little sauce dish.
you know the little plastic things we get in the hospital with the pills in them,
Oh yeah,
and they're measuring cups?
Yeah.
Like I used to buy those at Richard's Packaging for some of my creams.
Yeah.
Certain things that they're so thick that I would get as much as I could out with adding some cream with a knife and scraping around getting it out. But for some unknown reason, I've been saving those. Like I used to buy them when I was still making the creams.
yeah,
But most of them have been like I barely touch my lips to them because I don't use water to swallow pills. So I'm one of those freaks that can just go. The nurses always look at me like, "Where did you come from?"
yeah.
Because I'll take all the like pills that they give me, and I just take tip my head back, and the little thing barely touches my bottom lip. The thing is, you can't hold them in your mouth for a while or they get sticky. You have to just gorf them like a fish swallowing something.
Right.
And I probably have. I'm just going to pick a number and say at least 1,000,
No way.
because I just knew that these are going to go to some good use.
Right. Okay.
So do you want some?
Sure. Probably use them. For
I'll fill a Ziploc bag for you, a big Ziploc bag with
Yeah.
a few hundred of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It was funny because at one point in time, when I was still in the hospital, they ran out. And one of the nurses went, "Oh, I know where to go. Go to Blaine's room." And
He's got stash.
they used they probably used the hand wipes to give them all a wipe before they
yeah.
used them. But like I said, I haven't licked them or anything.
Yeah.
They're super clean, but you could give them a little bath or something. But
Well, cool. Look at this. We're coming up on the top of the hour, and we have
there's
spent an
all this
entire
other
hour.
stuff that
Yeah.
I meant to cover.
It was an incredible deep dive on Comfrey and Chamomile, CNC. That was awesome. I didn't know that was a request, to go into Comfrey and Chamomile. That was awesome. I love it. I'm glad to be able to kind of show and tell, share a little bit of what I've been doing.
Yeah.
with that
So
plant.
just wrapping that. if you make a water extract of the leaves, not the root,
Yeah.
I personally would not hesitate to take shots of that for about 6-8 weeks while healing a broken leg,
Yeah.
with no hesitation.
Yeah.
So cook it real slow, it ends up looking like soy sauce. And glycerin usually works. It would certainly work if you put it in a fridge.
Yeah.
But you could put just a couple drops of something like even tastier, like peppermint oil. But it doesn't have a bad taste, really. It just has kind of, I don't even know what to call it. It's not even a herby taste. It barely has a taste.
Mm-hmm.
But harvest some if you're growing it.
Cool.
And like I said, only let it get about a foot tall.
Yeah.
Hack it down.
Yeah.
Do that 3 times a summer, and you get more and better product because of the allantoin story.
Yeah.
And that people have been astounded. I usually warn, especially kids, because sometimes it stings. This might sting a little bit, like if you're still bleeding. This might sting a little bit, but it won't last more than a minute. And you go, okay. And there's a sting. Good, it's working. But the sting is that's the astringent effect of the tannins that's actually closing the wound without stitches.
Right.
And I've used it on a lot of really bad cuts that most people would have had stitched, and it closes the wounds.
Right.
You know?
Is this the one that in a previous conversation you said you want to make sure you got a clean wound? You know, you don't want to use it on something because it'll close it up too quick. Was that Comfrey that you were
I don't remember us talking about that, but you're quite right. If you've been sliced with a razor blade or broken glass or something, and it's a clean wound, even then you're probably bleeding some. But if you've got gravel and stuff because you wiped out surfboarding or something,
Yeah.
you want to make sure a wound's clean, and letting it bleed for a while is actually a good thing.
Right.
And then on with the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clean it up. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. It was a great conversation, deep dive on Chamomile and Comfrey. Let us know how you enjoyed this episode. Post any comments, any questions down below, and we look forward to hopping back on here next week and seeing where the conversation goes.
Thank you, and thank you.
Yeah. Bye for now.